Hello, hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to this Conscious Company Media webinar. My name is Kate Herman. I'll be giving a quick introduction before diving into a review of the Business Sustainability Booster Tool, which is an approach to business modeling specifically intended to bake sustainability into the DNA of a company across all aspects of the business. Leading the presentation today will be Dr. Marcia Willard. She's core faculty at Presidio Graduate School and principal of Axis Performance Advisors, which is a Northwest-based consulting firm helping organizations across all sectors become more sustainable. She's the co-founder and former executive director of the International Society of Sustainability Professionals and is an all-around rock star and pioneer in the sustainable business world. Later on, she will be joined by a few founders who will offer up some case studies to speak to how they applied the Business Sustainability Booster tool in developing their own businesses. This tool itself is made free and available to the public thanks to Presidio Graduate School, which I should mention is the alma mater of both co-founders of Conscious Company Media, as well as yours truly. So if you are curious about advancing your career in the sustainable business world with a formal degree or certificate, check them out. They have campuses in San Francisco and Seattle, offering a combination of in-person and online learning, and they now offer a 100% online program for those living abroad or away from the West Coast. I need to send out a quick thank you to some of our media partners who helped promote this webinar among their networks, including the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, JB Media Group, Conscious Capitalism San Diego Chapter, Conscious Capitalism Austin Chapter, and the Fledge Accelerator based out of Seattle. As usual, the webinar will take on a typical format with about a 40-minute presentation followed by Q&A. We do encourage all attendees to enter their questions in the question box throughout the presentation. Even if we can't answer them immediately, we do hang on to those and share them with our speakers at the end for discussion. So without further ado, I will pass it on to Marcia Willard to dive in.
Thank you, Kate. And welcome everybody. New friends and old friends. I see lots of familiar names on the list, so lovely to see you all today. So the title here is about building a conscious company from STEM to Stern. So I thought it useful perhaps to begin the conversation by asking the question, what is a conscious company, or otherwise known as a social venture? By our definition, a social venture or a conscious company is a business that makes a profit while addressing a social or environmental issue. In essence, it's specifically designed for this purpose. Its primary focus is to address a social issue or an environmental issue, but like any other business, it makes a profit because it has to be financially sustainable itself. So why would anybody do this? It's not just in our way of thinking at Presidio Graduate School. It's not just a do-gooder idea. It turns out that it makes good strategic business sense for a whole host of reasons, and I've just itemized a couple of them here. It enables you to avoid risks associated with perhaps declining access to important resources or changing public opinion or unexpected regulations or liabilities associated with your footprint. It helps distinguish you from the competition in your marketplace, and perhaps by building a more positive public image, taps new markets or underserved markets to expand your offering. And my favorite part is what the research is seeming to indicate is that creating an organization based on the purpose and values inspires loyalty and motivates creativity and dedication amongst employees like no other change initiative ever has. So why we might ask why every company isn't a conscious company, I think really it's why is every company not? It not only makes good sense, but it makes a contribution to the world. And I think the answer to that is probably because so many organizations held a very different and I think narrower mental model at their conception, and therefore failed to design in the attributes and processes and practices and principles that would set them up for these benefits. And then trying to add on a social purpose or a sustainability focus after the fact usually sets an organization up to fail to achieve the full impact of these benefits. So what we want to talk about today is a tool that we recognized helped our students think about some of these more deeper issues around sustainability as we help them design business plans. So 3 years ago, we developed this tool, and we did it in partnership with the Lemelson Foundation, who shared our vision and mission for helping entrepreneurs create conscious companies from the beginning so that they would avoid some of the risks that we identified and tap into some of these benefits. This is a tool that is free, and we'll make sure that you get access to it as a result of this webinar. And my purpose here today is to describe the tool and how it works. And I also have with me two representatives from two businesses that were launched by Presidio Graduate School students and alum, so that they can share their for real stories about how they applied some of these concepts in the designs of their own business. But first, a little background about this tool. This tool was developed to be used in conjunction with the business model canvas. Perhaps many of you are familiar with this tool. The business model canvas is in wide use throughout most business schools in the country and in entrepreneurial and business incubators all over the world. So it made sense to us to leverage the popularity of this tool. It's a great model. It's easy to use. It focuses business designers on 9 core business aspects as illustrated here in this image, starting with the value proposition of what an organization exists to do, and then working up and downstream, looking at key partners and key activities and customer relationships, and then also, of course, the cost and revenue model. And what we did was we augmented this. This is a great tool. The business model canvas is a great tool as far as it goes. While we used it in our program at Presidio Graduate School, it didn't quite fulfill our mission to turn out students who could change business for good, because it failed to address even the most basic sustainability-related considerations. So our view of this is sort of a great tool for helping people design businesses for the 20th century. And we're interested in helping students develop businesses that will last into the future and address some of the pending perils for our world. So if what we did was we took those 9 sections that you see here, and we created an overlay onto these 9 components to help people think through what they could do at the beginning in their design to ward off some of these risks and tap into some of these benefits. So we've overlaid these questions. We've added an additional 30 questions to the business model pattern. You can see some of the topics related to some of these questions. We designed the format so that it's easy to use, not only in the classroom, but with startup incubators as well, and even with existing businesses to help them fold some of these things into their own practices. So we worked with several of the NGOs that were benefactors from the Lemelson Foundation to talk about what they did and what would be useful for them. And it was an interesting conversation because they were very varied. We talked to some incubators that were working with pharmaceutical and high-tech entrepreneurs in New England, and software developers in India, and people who were working with rural agricultural projects in Latin America. So we tried to design something that was sensitive to the cultural differences around the world, and also the very different nature of the businesses, from very high-tech to very small rural kinds of development, so that we could produce something that would have the broadest use and be most versatile. So each of the questions that we created are printed on a separate piece of paper. You'll be getting a PDF file, so each page is a separate page, and designed to be easy to print and easy to use. We've got instructions in there about how to use them. You can use them all at once if you like. You can use them in phases, which is what we do in our program as we walk students through the business model canvas and looking at each section, and then we introduce these additional questions. We've had people use them just in ones and twos, picking from the lot the most relevant to the business that they're working with. We've had, as I mentioned, people use them as fodder for conversations in existing organizations to talk about different aspects. So the intent was to make it real approachable and real easy to use and very cheap to reproduce. So let me give you some examples here, and then I'll share what some real businesses are doing with them. I've got a card, one of the sample cards here, and it's associated with the value proposition, which is where I like to start students when working through the business model canvas. So just looking at the layout of the card, what I want you to notice is that at the very top in the upper left-hand corner, we identify the segment of the business model canvas that this is associated with, in this case value proposition, and underneath that is the topic of this particular card. And then the key question, this one is, what would be the larger value proposition beyond the immediate customer need that we could meet? Below that, we've included a rationale about why this question was included, why this consideration is important, the strategic business sense that it makes. And then that's followed by some more detailed questions to help the user think through how it might be applied and to inspire ideas for application for their own business. So in this case, this question about thinking about the larger value proposition, the intent here is to help businesses think beyond the bottom line and think beyond their own affection for whatever their product and service is, to start to explore the possibilities for how any given product or service might really help transform people's lives. And we think this is a really deep and interesting question to help inspire perhaps new product innovations. I'm going to share this product that's probably familiar to you all. It's a pretty simple product. It's a water container, but by its design, it was intended to facilitate and make easier a very onerous job for a lot of people in the world in terms of fetching their water. So thinking about not only providing a product, but one that really aids and meets social needs. And by the way, in the process, come up with something that's very creative and innovative and distinctive in the marketplace. Here's another example, also taken from the value proposition section. How can our product or service help our customers behave more sustainably? And this is an important one for lots of organizations, especially service organizations, I think, who we want to encourage to think beyond the footprint of their actual product and the creation of it, to think about how they can design something that changes the way that their end users actually behave, that fosters sustainable behavior amongst them. And a couple of examples of that, this washing machine on the left is an Electrolux product. Electrolux conducted a life cycle assessment on their washing machine to help them understand where the impact was in this product, expecting fully that because it's a large, heavy, basically metal device, that the impact would be in the manufacturing. And what they were surprised to discover is that the impact of manufacturing was far overshadowed by the impact of this device in its 10 to 20-year lifespan in use with the customer in terms of the energy and the water that it used. And that was the inspiration for this breakthrough technology. I think they were the first to have a front-loading, low water use washing machine, so that people who buy this product are unwittingly almost saving water just because of the design of the product. Soon to come to your stores, I understand, is in development a waterless washing machine, so watch for that technology. Also, another example are auto insurers who can literally, with the stroke of a pen, change what we drive and how much we drive with products like pay-as-you-go insurance that reward you for driving less, which, by the way, also cost them less in the long run, because I'm thinking that the less you drive, the fewer accidents you have. They've also started new products for people who participate in car sharing programs, which really eliminates the need for some people to have a car altogether. So lowering the impact of their users by the way their products are designed. This section has to do with customer relations, and the business model canvas wants you to consider about how you're going to interact with your customers. And we take that a little bit farther to think about how you can interact with your customers in a way that honors and respects them for who they are, thereby developing a deeper relationship, a more positive relationship, and maybe even tapping into markets that you may not have had access to had you not considered this kind of approach. And the example I use for this is Dove. These are quote-unquote beauty products that Dove produces, and what Dove recognized was that they were perhaps unintentionally contributing to cultural norms that stereotype women and girls. And they changed their approach to honor who their customers were and set themselves apart in the marketplace at the same time. My last example here has to do with cost structures. And what we chose to include in this section as an example was the issue of externalities, which I think you're all familiar with, is the ability of organizations to externalize costs, let society bear costs rather than putting them on their own books. And while this is kind of a good thing for business because it lowers operating costs, it's a risk because at any point public notions could change, and we might expect those costs to be borne by the organization. Think about cigarette companies, for example, who fought it for a long time but are now being asked to pay for the negative health impacts that their products have on society. And so while this is a tough one because to voluntarily internalize a lot of these costs when no one else in your industry is doing that could put you at a disadvantage. But the idea of many of these questions like this one is to be thinking ahead, to think about how can I design my organization so that I'm not creating so many of these externalities, which in the end could put me in great competitive advantage. The best example I could find for this is Puma, who you may have heard conducted their own analysis of what their externalities were actually costing society, and they put a price on it. And by their calculations, if they had to pay for all the benefits that they realized from these externalities, that it would totally eat their annual profit. And I thought it was very courageous of them to make that public. So these are just some examples. I've just culled 3 or 4 of the cards from the set just to give you a sense of how they work and what they focus on. And I've used some illustrations from industry just to indicate how they might, what they might result in, the kinds of ideas they might result in. But these are just examples, and what I wanted to do was to introduce a dose of reality. So I've invited a couple of businesses to share what they actually did with some of these considerations. Presidio Graduate School has spawned a number of conscious companies over the years, like Conscious Company Media, because our program is about changing business for good. So the 2 companies I have with us today were launched very recently, in the last year or 2, by students that were exposed to this tool in this program. So I'm going to start by first introducing Audra Willing, who is with us from Bridge Care Finance. So Audra, I'd like to turn it over to you.
So,
just let me know when you want me
thanks
to
so
advance.
much, Marsha. Perfect. So my name's Audra. I'm from Bridge Care Finance, and I thought what I'd do is just kind of, our model is a little confusing, so I thought I'd just run through a few slides just to give you a basic overview of what Bridge Care is, and then you'll probably see some of the ways that we built in these questions, but I'll talk specifically to it. So you can go to the next one, Marsha. So essentially what we are is a payment plan for childcare. So we are actually licensed consumer lenders. Parents go online, they apply for a payment plan with Bridge Care. And so what we're really trying to address is gender inequality, access to quality care for kids, and really providing an opportunity for professional mothers to continue a career path they've been working so hard to build. What ends up happening is childcare is so expensive, it's more than a mortgage or rent or public college tuition in Washington State. And so a lot of folks choose to leave the workforce. And so what we're doing is saying, hey, that's an example of good debt where you might have a future benefit by continuing, by taking out financing now. If you increase your earnings down the line, that could put you in a better situation. So this is what we've designed. And then if you go to the next one, Marsha, I can kind of show how it works. Yeah, that's the website. Let me do the next one. And then this is how folks apply. And then the next one is really like kind of how the payment works. So parents pay 50% of their childcare bill. Bridge Care adds financing support and forwards their full childcare tuition directly to the childcare facility. That's an important piece actually that we came up with as a result of this tool, and I'll talk about that in a second. Next, what happens is parents continue to pay Bridge Care, which is the next slide, Marsha, until this line of credit is paid off. So essentially what we do is turn 5 unaffordable years of childcare into just over 10 affordable years by creating this affordable monthly payment, and parents continue to pay. The next step is that parents transition to a college savings program. So we looked at a lot of these trends where one of the most helpful financial products some of the most helpful financial products are all about creating predictable payments. And so we wanted to create a predictable payment that would stick with a family throughout their education costs. So that's basically how it works. We do charge interest, so we're a business, so we make money off of the interest that we charge. We charge about half what credit cards do, which is important because 1 in 3 families are actually using credit cards right now. So right off the bat, we know we can save folks money. So one of the really important things that we thought about was this question that Marsha was talking about with the broad benefit in terms of how do we create larger value for our customers beyond their immediate needs. So we were concerned with the affordability of childcare, and we also were concerned with debt because this is a debt solution, and that's exactly what Marsha had been teaching us at school, is what you want to avoid creating more of. And so what we really thought about, well, the bottom line is we've got tons of women who are about to be in leadership positions who are leaving the workforce and then are not making their way back in. There's a lot of different ways to solve that, but this is one that we came up with. So we just challenged ourselves to say, you know what, if this product is going to work, it has to result in parents truly being in a better financial situation as a result of using our product. Otherwise, we don't think it's responsible or conscious or creating the change that we want to see. And so that was really the impetus for this college savings plan. And then once we started looking into the behavioral economic science of it, it turns out that success in savings is all about, of course, consistent behavior over time, which is actually because the Bridge Care payment plan lasts for between 5 and 10 years, depending on what kind of plan options folks choose, that we actually have a situation where we've already created that habit for our customers. And by basically helping them to do nothing, to change nothing, we could actually set them up to be really, really successful as families saving for college. It's something that most families plan to do, and very few are successful. And so that habit is what we want to bake in. And then we also decided to contribute 10% of total interest payments back to families who choose to do the college savings plan. So that also really helps us reduce risk, because it's this carrot that we have hanging out there to make, right? One of our huge risks as a business is defaults. And so it's a way that we also reduce risk for ourselves. So it's exactly what Marsha was talking about. It's like thinking about what can we offer that provides value for our customers, but also has a tangible benefit for us as a business and makes us stronger. And then something else we thought about a lot in customer relationships, which is another one of those quadrants, was about how do you build trust with a finance product? Like consumer lending is really looked at as one of the just worst of the worst in terms of transparency and trust, and people are so confused about how interest works, and it's kind of a questionable thing to begin with. So anyway, we really thought about how we can create that trust, and how do we need to explain to our customers what we're really after, and help them to see that our goal really is for you to continue a career that you're excited about, and to put you on a path to build a sustainable financial future as a family. And so those are all questions that were sort of non-negotiables for us in the design of BridgeCare. And because we really sat with those questions, even when we weren't quite sure what to do, we ended up having success, I think, in designing what we really wanted to have happen. So I think there's maybe one or two more, Marshall, which I could chat through, but they're, that's our team. Yeah, so credit cards, personal loans, home equity, those are all competitors of ours. And I think because of the way we built our product, it's really easy to outcompete because we were so thoughtful about what did our customers really need. And so again, it's those questions we came back to that helped us to do that. So yeah, here's a look at our team, and that's us, BridgeCare Finance.
Thank you, Audra. And I'm watching the question box, and I hope that questions come in as they occur to you. In the meantime, I want to move on and showcase our second business. We have with us Rob Gerke, who is one of the founders of Goodwill Hunting. Rob, I think you're there. You want to grab the mic and let me know. I'll be advancing the slides, so let me know when you need to slide change.
Sounds good. Put in the chat, how's my volume? Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Great. And before I go on, I want to congratulate Audra and her team on winning the Social Venture Partners Fast Pitch competition in the for-profit track just last night.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Just how awesome their model is, and speaks to the power of this business model. So my name is Robbie. I'm from Goodwill Hunting, and we create a sustainable and affordable option for promotional apparel. This is, the T-shirts you get, or the sweatshirts you get with your school or company organization's logo on it. And this came from a personal interest in figuring out how do we, as students, buy Presidio Graduate School branded apparel that was truly sustainable, because we knew, at least a few of us knew, that the apparel industry was one of the dirtiest industries in the world. It's been quoted that it's second only to the oil and gas industry. And we found out it takes over 700 gallons of water to create one single T-shirt from scratch. That's from growing the cotton to dyeing it to producing it all the way to finish. Next slide, please. So we used the business model canvas to put together some ideas, and I want to focus on just 3 of these. Next slide. And the first is our key partners. And we really focused on the authentic relationships piece. In Marsha's model, there's a few questions like, how can we, what's the structure of our relationship with our partners? How can we encourage win-win situations? And so our 2 biggest partners right off the bat was, first of all, Goodwill. Goodwill Seattle is the largest single Goodwill store in the world, so it was a great partner to have in our backyard. And over the course of 4 or 5 meetings with their head of new business ventures, we checked a lot of our assumptions where we thought they needed help bringing Goodwill out to the world. And they said, no, actually in the Northwest, people shop Goodwill more than they do elsewhere. What we really need is help getting rid of this backlog. And you'll see on the right, this is their warehouse of unsorted donations. And I say unsorted because they get 200,000 new items every single day, and right off the bat, half of them, about 100,000 of them, are unusable, unsellable, and they go straight to the outlet or straight to resource recycling. So by creating this authentic relationship, we could figure out their, just like we figured our customer's pain point, we figured out our partner's pain point, and started designing a win-win relationship where we could get access to this warehouse, start to subsidize their part-time workers whom they pay a fair wage, which they're proud of, to start to go through these hundreds and thousands of boxes. And as they're pulling things out and sorting, if they come across some sweatshirts that meet our customers' request, they'll pull those aside for us. That symbiotic win-win would not have happened without that authentic relationship that we developed with Goodwill, and that also applied to our suppliers as well, our subcontractors, those who were doing the silk screening and embroidery. Again, we take secondhand clothing, such as items from Goodwill, and then we add your school or company's logo to it. And over the course of 8 months, we really developed bonds with our key subcontractors. One was this super sweet, septuagenarian embroiderer whom we ended up having multiple breakfasts with him and his wife. We would go over to their house and he would teach us how to embroider and why certain things work and don't work. With our silk screener, we toured their factory. So that this was not a transactional relationship. This truly became a social, symbiotic one where, because we were doing something new, normally they have 100 shirts that are all identical. We had 100 shirts that are all unique. Because of that, we both needed to figure out how to make this work for both of us. And I don't think that could have happened if it was just a transactional relationship. Next slide, please. We also looked at our revenue stream, and one of the questions that Marcia's model asked is how do we offer a more affordable option to the customer segments that might need it but might not be able to afford it. Next slide. So we came up with two options. Our main service is you give us our logo, we take care of everything else. We'll do the sourcing for you, we'll do the embroidery, we deliver it to you. But two variations that can make it more affordable. One is the organization does the shopping. And so we did this with a local business, the Princeton Review, where there are 30 or so employees during their staff meeting as a team building actually went down the street for about half an hour and pulled off about 30 or 40 items from the Goodwill shelf. They paid for it, which meant they can determine their price point. That meant no markup on their end, so it was more affordable. And for us at Goodwill Hunting, it took a lot of the burden and running around and logistical hurdles of doing the shopping or sourcing the material, and it also allowed them to have greater control over what exactly they think their teachers would like to wear. So by offering a more affordable option and thinking through that, actually unlocked a way to get over one of our hurdles. And then an even more affordable option we offered is having people even supply their own shirts. So on the right, you see a run club. This is with Flying Bright Bike Brewery over in Ballard, a co-op brewery. They have a Wednesday night run club that their members do, and they wanted to do t-shirts, and they were going to go traditional, but one of their members is a student of ours, and pitched us, and they just went crazy when they heard about it. They thought this was a fantastic idea, but some of their members didn't want to shell out 15 or 20 bucks for a shirt. So they opened it up where you can buy your own from us, or you can supply your own and just pay the $5 silk screening fee. And that gave us a way to differentiate and offer two different price points, which ultimately led to a happier client and a really awesome picture. You can see on the right just from our point of view how beautiful it is to see an organization that celebrates both the individuality of its members and the cohesion of the group as a whole. Go to the next slide, please. Third part of our business model that we tweaked was the key activities. And one of the big questions here to make something more sustainable is offering it as a service instead of a product. And you may have heard this before. And so we really took this seriously a few months in and thought hard. And we realized that while we couldn't quite yet compete on price with a lot of the big players in the industry, who it's really just a race to the bottom in the promotional apparel. And so, offering $200 for a bunch of T-shirts might not work for some HR managers. But what if we offered $200 for a leadership and team building experience? What if we pitched ourselves as a consultancy, as a service to offer, as a way to come in and do a creative team building where it is focused on your team members' individuality and their strengths and how they come together to still represent the team. And hey, you get T-shirts included in that. And so we went through some design workshopping and came up with this leader shirt in a box idea, where we sent them 40 shirts and we curated a few team building activities, and that culminated in each member going through and picking out a shirt that represents them and a shirt that they thought represents a team member, and they explained why. And then we would take those back, embroider them, send them back to them a week later, and they could actually write in their values and write in their name and have a deeper connection to their shirt and a deeper connection as a team as well. We did that with a kind of forward-thinking real estate company here in Seattle, and they just loved it. And they're a pretty traditional group. So we wanted to make sure this doesn't just work with the touchy-feely crowd. And they did it as part of their annual staff appreciation day, where they were having beers and steaks on the backyard, and they did this for a half hour, and it went over really well. Offering it as a service made us realize we weren't selling T-shirts, we were really selling experiences, and we were selling team building more than anything else. So these are three ways that Marcia's questions really got us to think differently about our company. We just started this past January, so we're less than 9 months old. So when Marcia talks about building this in from the ground up, this is something that we really did and continue to do. I think that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Robbie. I think that's it for us. I hope you've been inspired by some of these business ideas, either inspired to download your copy of the tool, which you can do at info.presidio.edu/booster. I'm also eager to tell you that if you're interested in the Presidio Graduate School MBA or MPA program, as it happens, we're having a virtual open house today at noon, so just after this the conclusion of this webinar, and we've got the website there for you. And with that, I think I'll turn it back to Kate, and who will facilitate our Q&A session. I see there at least one question in the box.
Yeah, we did get a couple questions through the question box and the chat box. And if you've been listening and anything's popped up during this time, feel free to drop it in the question box to hear Marcia, Audra, or Rob address it. We just uploaded the PDF of the slide deck for attendees, so if you guys want to reference any of these slides in addition to the tool itself, then you can access that now. Marcia, one question I wanted to ask you was at the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned how the Business Sustainability Booster tool can be used to address the concept of maybe missing mental models that can be an important precursor to addressing sustainability when designing a business model, and how it's often a hurdle to true sustainability in an enterprise if they're not going into the design with the right mental model. And some people are really familiar with this concept, some aren't, and I think that the case studies Audra and Rob presented address those, but can you just speak a little bit to the concept of a mental model and how this applies to sort of like our current, maybe arguably mainstream approach to enterprise modeling?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, Kate. So I think what I had in my mind when I mentioned that is the predominant mindset of the 20th century that the business of business is business, to quote a famous capitalist. And that when you look at the business model canvas, it does a really fabulous job of helping a business entrepreneur or a business manager think about how to position and design an organization to sell stuff to people. And that worked well for us for many years as at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, but it's becoming a little bit anachronistic now. And we have all experienced the fact that with no malintent, many businesses are now producing services and goods that have a detrimental side, have a downside. And I think the mental model that we try to foster at Presidio Graduate School is how can I change business for good, and that's an intentional pun, and create enterprises that generate economic value while also generating social and environmental value. We like to even think beyond what the popular definition of sustainability is to think about regenerative organizations. And I think you saw a couple of good examples today. You know, Bridge Care Finance solves an immediate social need, but at the same time helps their customers save for college. So it's almost as if they're leaving people with more wealth than they started as a result of their business design. That's just a different way to think about things rather than just thinking about what mechanism can I design to empty people's pockets. So it's a great question. It's a little mind-boggling. What we've tried to do with these questions is to foster the kind of thinking that we hope will result in these breakthrough models that create extra value for the world. Thanks for asking that.
I think in some ways you have to possess a certain mental model in order to entertain the thought of changing your mental model to begin with, but I think the tool is that it seems like a really straightforward approach. It really helps spell it out for people if they're approaching it with a business lens, and how some of those questions tie directly back to the health of the business.
It might become kind of full circle. What I think a lot of people have lost sight of is that corporations were originally created mostly to do public good, the kinds of things that government wasn't in a position to afford or to be able to tackle. So, you know, the first corporations were about trade and railroad building and infrastructure creating because they added value to the economy and into society. And that still to this day, every corporation is chartered by a state in this country and serve at the will of the people, that people and the state have the actual right to revoke a corporate charter if we don't like what they're doing. but for some reason we've sort of forgotten that.
Marcia, I think we're going to have to invite you back for a separate webinar on models and the state of business as a whole.
That would be fun.
That would be fun and probably very well needed. A couple more questions that I still want to get to, and Audra and Rob, please feel free to jump on the mic if there's anything that either of you want to add. These are just some high-level questions for now. One of them is related to, so the tool itself is very straightforward, it looks pretty user-friendly, but if there are burgeoning entrepreneurs listening out there sitting on a really great idea, doing their best to build a business from the ground up, it can feel pretty intimidating just to establish a viable business in addition to accounting for externalities and trying to, you know, address the values of their customers, etc. It can be a lot to take in and keep on their radar. So just like, is there any access to coaching or support networks for people who want to leverage this tool, or are you aware of any auxiliary resources that you might recommend for someone who wants to use it, but they're just starting to dip their toe in business modeling as a whole? And maybe Audra and Rob, if you guys sort of reached out and received any support beyond the Presidio community, if you could share that with the audience as well.
I'll take a first stab at that. Yes, we're a business school. Lots of business school use the business model canvas, which makes it easy then to just tack this on. The business model canvas is pretty approachable, even if you want to do it all on your own. They've got a book called The Business Model Generator, I think it's the name of it, and so it coaches you through that process. I've also seen this used. I know that Mercy Corps here in Portland, where I am, offers a service incubator and grants to budding entrepreneurs, and they use the business model canvas. We worked with, as I mentioned, several nonprofits around the world, one based in India, and one in Latin America, and one in San Francisco. So I think there are dozens and dozens of those. So you might, people might just poke around, but I would recommend starting with at least the book and having a look at what the business model canvas does and how to approach that. Thank you. Robbie's posted the link to the book, and it's created for public domain. The business model canvas is readily available, just like our tool is. Audra, you got anything you want to add, or Rob?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, it can be overwhelming as you're going through. I think one thing to avoid is to look at some of these questions in the booster and think like, oh, this doesn't apply to me, like moving on. So I think one is you're never going to answer all of these questions, but I think the more that you can read through everything and just hold that as possibility, like maybe, I don't know, maybe there is a way for Bridge Care to do more with environmental impact, which we found out actually data storage is a huge place where we can make a really big difference because we do everything online. That's something we wouldn't have considered if we hadn't read that section. So one strategy that my co-founder Jamie and I had was, we have to move forward on concrete items and move this business forward, and then we would save long drives for exploring some of these deeper questions, and we would just chat about it, and sometimes we wouldn't make a specific business decision that would implement that, but then lo and behold, 6 months later it would pop up as, oh my gosh, we talked about this, and now all of a sudden we have an opportunity to actually move forward. And so it's so much easier for us to grab those opportunities because we're always challenging ourselves to revisit those fundamental questions that kind of help us be able to see more opportunities.
Great story, Audra. Thanks.
Yeah, Audra, that was really helpful. Thank you.
And I'll just
okay,
add,
so I'm going to...
If I may add briefly, everything I've seen, all these questions have never been a burden for us. They've always unlocked greater creativity, greater insight, and led to more customers. So this is a treasure trove.
Totally agree. Well put, Rob.
Thank you both.
I think that's also a good example of going into it with the right mental model of curiosity as opposed to being overwhelmed. So the fact that you've actively leveraged that attitude is pretty inspiring. All right, I'm going to try to do my best to capture the essence of this question that came in through one of the attendees in the question box. It comes from Chip, and he says, can you address that weird time when a supplier loves the idea of your brand and is excited for weeks and expired? Then the weird moment comes when markup margins start to come into the conversation and the old brain kicks in. I'm assuming the old brain of dialed in only on the bottom line, and all of the attention to externalities goes out the window. So can you provide any direction and guide conversations when this happens? Chip, feel free to add a follow-up or clarification to that question in the question box, but it sounds like you know, how to manage if you're using the sustainability booster tool in your business, and you can sort of capture your values and ideals in a conversation with a supplier or stakeholders, and when that bumps into tension with the bottom line and financial resources, has that ever happened for you, Rob or Audra, or is there a case study of someone who sort of tackled that tension successfully?
I would love to hear from Rob or Audra, but let me start by saying, Chip, it's a great question, and we're certainly not promoting killing off the old brain, because it's still an important part of a business proposition to be financially viable. We like to think of that as a yes and. Yes, you have to get the best deal, and yes, you have to be profitable, and it turns out that the and is seldom mutually exclusive, and so it's that kind of thinking that we're trying to foster. And as I talked to some of these incubators in developing this tool, they were very clear from the very beginning. These people are very keen on setting up a financially viable business. And I said, yes, and they should be. And there are still some things to think about. So sometimes the idea that you come up with that the questions might inspire might not be immediately applicable, but as Audra said, addressing it now and watching how it might unfold or might create opportunities down the line is still valuable. So with that, Rob or Audra, any comments?
Yeah, I'll start. What we actually found is our suppliers and subcontractors gave us better deals because they liked what we were doing. So that actually increased our profit margin. And I'll also add that our customers, were more willing to not drive a hard bargain in terms of, that's too much, or I can't afford it. They were happy to give over their money because, again, they were happy with not only the product has to be great, but all the values and reason behind it too. I found that is a wonderful side effect of having your values and sticking to them, is that you attract people who want to help you, and you create value all around, and people who want to increase your margins and see you succeed.
I kind of agree with that, Rob. It's interesting. We at Bridge get asked this question a lot, which is like, well, at the end of the day, when you got to chop some heads, like, what do you choose, profit or sustainability? And it's like, that is just not how we think about it. Like, we do not think about those two things as one or the other, or as at odds with each other, or anything like that. Like, it has to be all in one. Like, we don't do anything we do at the sacrificing profit over doing the things that we do. Like, we just challenge ourselves to say, great, we know this is what we want to do. We want to be a green company. We want to provide broad social benefits. So those are non-negotiables. And of course, we're a finance company. We're trying to make money. So those are all things that have to be true. So we have to keep looking until all of those things click into place. So it's funny. Yeah, I think the way you approach that question just says a lot about even the thinking. So I think it's like moving even further back to kind of examine the thought pattern there and decide that, like, well, these things are linked and can be linked, and it's just a matter of our own creativity and how we can build something new.
Yeah, I'll share my completely non-empirical theory that business is about 20% economics and 80% psychology. So the role and the important to your point, Rob, about relationship building, and if you can create and establish trust in a relationship with a client or a supplier, then that can often win over the quote old brain way of thinking. But to Chip's point, I think that it's going to, we live in a world where there are still people out there who haven't quite grasped some of these concepts. So, perhaps it's a sign that that's not somebody who you would want to be doing business with because they're not sharing the same values that are driving your business. And whether or not that's an option, of course, remains to be determined. And Rob, I have to share this question with you that came in just because I myself am curious, but someone asked, how do you manage any confusion with the movie Good Will Hunting? It looks like they had some trouble finding you on Google. So has this been an issue that has come up for you guys and you're addressing SEO?
It's been a huge issue. Half the people love our name, half the people hate it. We are in the process of actually changing it. And the current forerunner we have is branded apparel. But that's we have yet to make the full marketing switch to that.
We have a couple content marketing webinars that we can share with you for helping out. Shameless plug. All right, so we're getting ready to wrap up. I'll address a few quick questions that came in. Yes, we will be sharing contact information for the speakers in a follow-up email that goes out to all the attendees and registrants from the webinar. It looks like some people are having trouble accessing the tool itself with the info at Presidio link that was shared. My understanding is that it is a PDF that will be shared with attendees after the event as well. We send out a recording, like a thank you email with a recording of the webinar, and we can include a copy of the PDF in a follow-up email to all the attendees, excuse me, as well at that time. I think we're ready to wrap up more or less, but can you guys, are there any closing thoughts or any ideas or next steps that have bubbled up for any of the three of you that you guys want to share with the audience before we let everyone loose?
Oh, good question. Go forth and do good. I would love to have folks look at the tool and provide any feedback or comments. Mostly, I would love to hear testimonials that if you use it to advantage, to let us know that.
Awesome, and thank you, Marcia, Audra, and Rob, for leaving the door open to further communication for the attendees after this event. Yeah, if anyone has feedback, we have a survey for this webinar that'll immediately pop up as soon as it ends. Any and all feedback is greatly appreciated and welcome. If you've ideas for future webinars, Pure Conscious Company Media, please check them out. Again, look into Presidio if you have more questions about what they're offering up to the business world. And with that note, I think we can go ahead and end and let everyone go back to enjoying their Wednesday afternoons. Thank you so much, Marcia, Audra, and Rob, for taking time to share your personal experiences and what this tool has meant for you as entrepreneurs. And with Marcia's words, continue to go forth and do good work.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And thank you all for attending.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.